Okay, so The Legend of the Mystical Ninja, known in Japan as Ganbei Goemon, is an action-adventure game for 1 or 2 players made by Konami. It was released for the Super NES in 1991 and was, I would argue, one of a kind. It was the first game in the Japanese video game series Ganbei Goemon to have a Western release. With its blend of action, humour, minigames and bizarreness, it's a kind of small miracle that it ever made it out of Japan. But even though this may be prematurely giving the game away, I have to say it's one of my most loved Super Nintendo games. I first remember playing this at a friend's house, and not all games were 2-player back then, so there had been a lot of cases where one of us would watch the other one play a game. So this, the 2-player Cooperative was instantly great. Because a lot of the time, 2 players very much about beating each other. Whereas the 2 of us sat down and tried to get as far through this game as we could. In all honesty, back in those days we didn't get that far. We probably only got to the 4th level, but we must have played the first level a million times. It's strange to think that you can be playing a game now and somebody's mum wants them to go somewhere, or you get called home. People say that, as an adult you have no time for games and it was so much easier as a child. Yeah, you could pour a lot of time into a game as a child, but there was always somebody that could pull you out and tell you had to go somewhere or had to do something. And you couldn't always, people like to make out that old games were the golden era. There's a lot of good things nowadays where you can save and come back to it whenever you want. We couldn't really do this so well with Mystical Ninja, so we'd be playing the first level again and again. It's one of those games though that, having played with him and having never gotten too far into it, I just knew I had to own myself, and I eventually got an imported American copy. I only ever remember completing it one time, because although it's an incredibly easy game at the start, things do get very difficult later on. The game has 2 main different styles of gameplay, but there's also a sprinkling of simple mini-games and distractions. The first kind of gameplay is sort of like a beat-em-up, as you as Kid Ying, aka Goemon, or you and a friend as Kid Ying and Dr. Yang explore towns, fight enemies, visit shops. One shop sees you able to seek employment. You can do a painting task, which is just basically an excuse to let you play Snake. Then there's Whack-a-Mole, and if you can manage to do well at them, you can make nice little piles of money. And this can then be spent in other shops where you can buy food to increase your energy or shoes to help you jump higher in the later platforming focus parts. The second part of the levels, the platforming-like sections, they're 2D side-scrolling stages that play in a way which will feel familiar to fans of other Konami franchises like Contra and Castlevania. You move from left to right, making jumps, hitting enemies, and trying to make your way to the boss. The game's story is all about Kid Ying's quest to save the kidnapped Princess Yuki. Yes, this may seem like an average boring plot, but the game is just so fun and so silly that you can't help but fall in love with it. Cutscenes are illustrated vibrantly with large comical characters bursting at the seams, with the kind of personality not often seen outside of the very best cartoons. The soundtrack in this game is also worthy of praise. It's quite simply superb. You'd struggle to find many superior scores in the SNES library. It's up there with the likes of Mario World, F-Zero, Zelda: A Link to the Past, and I believe that this is true of the game itself. As I've kind of mentioned, for me, the game's greatest selling point, without a shadow of doubt, is the cooperative play. It's still a good game if you decide to attempt it on your own, but with a friend it's so much more. You'll laugh together, compete while trying to earn cash at minigames, but ultimately work together to try and beat the game. I played this game on and off for years, both at home and at my friend's house, and the little animations between levels had us in tears. Kid Ying would be in a raft while Dr. Yang swam behind him being chased by a shark, for example. It was brilliant, little subtle bits, the looks on the characters' faces, there's just such attention to what you'd think are minor details. And you can earn a lot of money in the minigames, but it also breaks up the flow really well. You've been walking around bashing things on the head, go play a bit of Snake, go to some Whack-a-Mole. Heck, there's even an arcade where you can play a shoot 'em up. It's just brilliant little bits of touches. Keeps you with lots of things to do, but it also, gives the game a real sense of a world. The controls are just so perfect that there's no real need to talk about them, they just work. You never feel like any hit or death was anything apart from your own fault, which I know this is a phrase I use a lot, but to me that really is the measure of a good game. And if that's not true, a game isn't going to hit anywhere above a 7 out of 10. The game also has a great learning curve. It gets very hard later, but the first few levels really help build you up and get ready for the challenges you'll face. The Legend of the Mystical Ninja is a brilliantly fun, wonderful, colourful and extremely challenging in the later stages adventure. It's a hard game to criticise. I could tell you of the hundreds and hundreds of times when I played the early levels of it again and again. And yeah, as I said, I've only finished it once, and this might sound bad, but it's not really, because every moment spent messing around on this game was a moment of pure joy. Unlike a lot of games that try and be comedy sort of games, I actually find this one genuinely funny. It's not just chuckle funny, sometimes it's absolutely bang laugh out loud funny. I'd give this game 9 out of 10 and I'd strongly recommend it. If you want to play it, then it'll cost you about £30 for a PAL cart, about 20 for a USA one, and obviously more if you want it boxed. It's worth this amount easily. It's available on the Wii Virtual Console, at least if that thing's still running. And, you know, so there's cheaper, easier ways to get it. It made its way to the Super Famicom Mini, but unfortunately it didn't end up on the Super Nintendo Classic Mini, which I think is an absolute crying shame. It's also a crying shame that there was 2 sequels on the SNES, and we didn't get either of those. For Europe's next crack at a Mystical Ninja game, on a home console at least, you're looking for the N64 one. But despite owning a Japanese copy of that, I have to admit I haven't really played it. At least not enough to give any real critique of it. It's a shame, obviously people know this, but we used to get brilliance like this from Konami all of the time. The Konami seal on a SNES box was pretty much a seal of quality. And I don't mean like that stupid seal of quality that's on Nintendo products that basically, you know, they're not going to blow up. It was a seal of enjoyment. You knew that game's got Konami on it. That's worth a throw. And unfortunately, you know, yeah, we got Metal Slug out of them. They've had a long history. But now they're more obsessed with pachinko machines. Will we ever see the adventures of Kid Young and Dr. Young again? Probably only in retro re-releases. And that's a crying shame. Okay, thank you for listening. It's Kerr9000 signing out. Have a great day, everybody.